Okay, this is screencast number 4. This corresponds to slides 72 to 79 on the PowerPoint. There are drawings involved here, and this one is on the types of fatty acids. All right, right now on the smartboard, I have the fatty acid you drew a couple of minutes ago or whenever you listened to screencast number 2, because this fatty acid is the first overall type there, which is called a saturated fatty acid. So if you would go back and add that, if you've already drawn your saturated fatty acid, add that word to it so that we know further labelings there. Fatty acids are, again, long hydrocarbon chains that are found in certain types of lipids. So fatty acids are really only found in triglycerides, which is why we're covering it now, and phospholipids. All right, so fatty acids, a saturated fatty acid. Well, what are the characteristics? You take a look here. All right, saturated fatty acids have single bonds between the carbon-to-carbon atoms. And so therefore, you have as many hydrogen that can possibly be bonded to the carbons as possible, hensing saturation. To compare to an unsaturated fatty acid, you see here, this one needs to be drawn. All right, so you see here, same carbons, except in the middle, you have a double bond. So fatty acids with double bonds or even triple bonds are unsaturated. Okay, and we're going to take a look at the classifications of unsaturated fatty acids. All right, and so if you look, remember the whole idea behind your chemical stability is that there are 8 electrons in the outermost level to bond to make it chemically stable, so something can bond to carbon. All right, so carbon is bonding. It's 2, 4, 6, and 8. So that would mean unsaturated, less than the maximum number of hydrogen atoms on this. Now, this is also a specific type of unsaturated fatty acid, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a look at the notes pretty quickly. Bring that up, and then we'll move ahead. All right, so again, saturated fatty acid is a palmitic acid. The first 2 that you see here are both structural. All right, so take a look at your fatty acids. Single covalent bonds join the carbon atoms, no double bond. And so therefore it has the maximum number of hydrogen atoms. And thus, these saturated fatty acids are linear, as you see, and they originate generally from animal sources. And since you're an animal, you make saturated fat yourself, and when you start adding on stuff that you eat, that's why we get too much. These are typically solid at room temperature. Butter, lard, fat around an animal, let's say a steak, fat around the grizzle there. Yummy, but who eats that? Unsaturated, compare the first 2. Right, the first 2, those are both structural. So if you're asked a very specific question about structure, there it is. Compare the 2 of them. All right, compare the 2 of them. And you have, tends to be liquid at room temperature, and so therefore healthier for you. Take a look at some of those plant-based oils there, olive, corn, sunflower, and there are others as well that go along with that. So the first 2 are structural. So if you're comparing single versus double, maximum versus less than maximum, there. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look. So there you can see a complete unsaturated triglyceride. Double bond, double bond, double bond type of bond. Just look for that. Again, you don't have to draw this at all. Just recognize it. And you can see a saturated fat. Well, you really can't unless you do it out and have the 15 carbon and the 31 surrounding it. So, but it is a saturated fat. Take it from me or write it out. Again, a better take a look here, all the way, single bonds all the way through. It is a bit of shorthand. Single bonds all the way through, highlighting that palmitic acid, straight chain, and this is what is referred to in organic chem as a straight chain, because classically a unsaturated fatty acid has what they call kinks between, okay, the carbon to carbon where the double bond is. Straight chains allows monocle. Notice tightly packed. Kinks prevent close packing. Notice. All right, so that's the idea. So kinks might be important to add to your notes at the appropriate spot and to look for. But really, don't worry about the word. It's just a organic chem word, kinks. Just this is called a straight chain. It's not straight specifically, but a straight chain. And this is a fizzle, and this is not as well. So 2 double bonds between the carbons. Let's move on. So unsaturated fatty acids are classified further into monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fats. If there is only one double or triple bond, it's called a monounsaturated fat. If it has at least two double or triple bonds, a polyunsaturated fat. So this picture right here, we're going back to that for a second. This is definitely a polyunsaturated fat because there's more than, can't really see that, more than one double bond. All right, and because of that monounsaturated fat, you only have two empty spaces, and then there's going to be more empty spaces on the polyunsaturated fat, as you see below here. There are a couple specific types of unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats that they want to speak of, and all of this we're going to be speaking of the health risks, I suppose, of having too much of a fat-filled diet coming up. Good fats versus bad fats, saturated versus monounsaturated. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. All right? A cis fat. So you had saturated, unsaturated. You had mono, poly. Now two subs of a polyunsaturated fat. A cis fat. All right? Cis and trans fats are isomers of each other. Cis fats, you can see the double bond here, but the hydrogen are attached to the same side. All right, it's hydrogen, hydrogen, so not one here and one there. Same side, same side, same side, same side. Ignore, because I don't want to deal with it. Same side. All right, however, this is still a cis fat. Good one. Same side. That's structural again. You want to be able to classify structure because depending on the question asked, you can't just answer anything you want. This is not asking about health risks. Same side, same side. Let's classify or characterize it with a trans fatty acid. Notice same side unsaturated. Okay, polyunsaturated there, cis fat, and then a trans fatty acid are on opposite sides. All right. Notice a cis fat same side and opposite side. That's the big structural difference between them. Trans fatty acids, you should know also, this is kind of like an invented fat. They don't occur commonly in nature, and they're generally produced in the food plants or whatever by a process that's called hydrogenation. All right, which actually they change it, which is why over the years it was so unhealthy. I mean, they thought back in the World War II days that when they made margarine, that margarine was healthy until like the 50s and 60s when the incidences of coronary heart disease started to rise big time then. So again, same size cis, opposite sides trans. I'll look there. Again, no diagrams here, just recognize what they are. And then we have a chart for you. Cis and trans fats are generally isomers of each other, even though you have structural differences, same chemical formulas, same side, different side, loosely packed, allowing as much hydrogen as possible to get on it, tightly packed, trans fats, all right, which then gives you your solid and your liquid, occurs commonly in nature, as you can see below here. Plant-based, cis fats are plant-based. These are your good fats. We'll talk a little bit more about them in the health. And these are generally, let me go back. These are generally bad for you, excuse that. Deep fried food, processed food, cake, stuff like that. Stuff that we all love, but unfortunately, not really good for you. But everything in moderation. You can have fat, just don't have a complete diet of fat. No burgers every single night. So that is slide 79, and that is a comparison of saturated and unsaturated, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated, and cis versus trans fats.